Hey guys, BJ the Brave here, back with this week's meta snapshot for Shadowverse Worlds Beyond. Just want to say a massive thank you. I have noticed a lot more of you subscribed to the channel after last week. I mentioned that something like 75% of people who watch this had actually subscribed yet. So I really appreciate everybody who is supporting the channel and helping the channel to grow. It encourages me to make more content like this. So a huge thumbs up to you. Right guys, we are now into week 3. We've got the last chance qualifier this weekend. There's lots going on. We just had the content creators tournament. There's a ton happening and the meta is definitely settling. I've got a few new changes, a few movements. I've actually indicated where things have gone up and down in the snapshot compared to last week. So with that said, let's just dive straight on in. All right, so first of all, let's talk about tier 4. Now remember guys, I have said that I do think this is one of my favorite metas since the game happened. And even though we're looking at kind of 4 tiers, I actually think the gap between them is much more slight this season. There are a couple of decks that I do think are kind of like ahead of the pack significantly, but honestly, like, it's not a toxic meta at all. It's actually pretty close and pretty varied, and there's a lot of decks you can play that you can definitely pick up wins with. So I'm really enjoying this. So let's jump into tier 4. I'm not going to go through an example deck list for every one of these guys, but obviously, I still think Artifact is kind of funny, right? Because you remember, for those of you who've been playing the game since Season 1, you remember that Artifact was a Tier 1 deck. And I sometimes wonder, like, are we being really harsh on Artifact? How has it gone from Tier 1 to 4? But I think the huge significance of it is when you think about the Masterwork doing 10 damage or 13 with a Storm, it's just too easy to play around now with all the heal. You didn't have all that in Season 1, and so it was such a much more significant threat. Whereas now it's just so much harder for the Artifact to set up that win con. They don't really have as many alternative win cons. But I still think it's you know, it's a tier 4 deck. I've actually played Amulet Haven or Storm Haven this season, and I've got a deck list to show you. One that actually did very well. I personally struggled to get it off the ground, but it's one of those decks where when it all comes together, it feels really powerful, but pulling it all together is difficult and it's not as consistent. Aggro Abyss, you know, Abyss is like the best class in my opinion right now. Like, it's just the fact that you can make 4 or 5 different archetypes, as I said before. I think Aggro Abyss is a great climber, especially if you're a new player. Potentially it's even high. It should be higher than this, to be honest. Potentially Aggro Abyss should actually be higher, especially in the lower ranks. I think it could be one of the best ladder climbers, right? But it does struggle because of the amount of heal again that's been added to the game, so it's not as potent as it once was. Now the Rose Queen, last week we talked about where Rose Queen was going to sit. Now I have got on a deck list for you that went got a 10 win streak, but I played it and I don't think I can seriously put it above tier 4. Azudia Control, I've had lots of chats with my guild member, guild teammate Barrick, who obviously won the what do we call it? The Shadowverse, not the Grand Prix Open. You know what I'm talking about. And I'm desperate for him to come up with an Azudia build, but we just feel that it's just not in as good a spot this season. So it's still down in tier 4. OTK Dragon is, I actually saw Spicy's running a really interesting variant of OTK Dragon. He basically gave up on the Jerry one-turn combo and went all in on the Zell one-turn combo. And I've said numerous times that my favorite version of this was actually Teddy's version, which had half and half. It had one Zell and it had one Jerry, or multiple Jerrys, but it could basically get the OTK either way. Kind of interesting to see him just give up on the Jerry and just go kind of all 3 on the Zells and just go into the Cocytus and the one-turn kill that way. So that's interesting. I don't know if he got it like really working at a high level though, so I still think it's probably right now a tier 4 deck. And then you've got Evo Tempo Forest, and obviously we think a lot of people quite like the Evo Forest. I kind of like the idea of it, but I just don't think it's quite got the power of some of the other Evo decks. So yeah, these are the tier 4 decks. Just a couple of examples there. This is the Amulet Haven deck that I referred to that I used this season. It did get a 10 win streak, which is pretty cool. I think this deck is it's kind of like really interesting because it plays some of the new cards, right? Tico, just a one-of, is like interesting because you can basically just play it to get an extra amulet, right? Like What have we got? We've got Wingline Statue, Darkhaven Grace, the Heroic Visionary. That's the one I was thinking of. Yeah, the one that this card being able to essentially like give you Storm. It's kind of a nice addition because obviously we're used to having the little the 2/2s that come out that have Storm, and now you've got this additional Storm. Agnes is way better now. Like, it's just way more easy to trigger Agnes, which is pretty cool. And even Skyfaring Vessel's kind of interesting. So it's like kind of like a cheat way of giving Evolve, because this thing goes down. This thing gets cheaper in hand every time you trigger an amulet, like you engage an amulet. So you get this. The idea is you can get this down to like 0 and play it, and then you get a free Evo. It's a very complicated deck to all orchestrate and pull everything together in the right way. And because it's a card game and you don't know which order you're going to draw things, I think it adds to the complexity of a deck like this, where you're trying to time everything. So for me, it's still really, yeah, I think it's a fun one. It's really fun, but it's not. I don't think it's higher than turn 4. Tier 4. And speaking of tier 4, this is the Rose Queen. We talked about the back end of last week. Like I said, I played it a little bit. I didn't have much joy and success with it. I'm sure it's much better than I was doing with it. Like I said, someone did get a 10 win streak with it, but yeah, it's obviously things like Starry Sky, Eradicating Arrow. These are cards. These are 1-drops, right? So these play into the Opulent Rose Queen strategy quite nice. And what I do like about the deck construction is that, you know, there's not a lot that is above that, right? You use the Hamlet to draw, you use the Glade for that mid-turn finish to time it to set up a free area, and everything else is like, you know, it's a 1-drop, right? Or you can use things like the Garden's Allure, or you can use things like the Hamulet to kind of kill off the the Grimney if you don't want it, or any of the kind of bigger units. So it's kind of well designed, but I just don't think it can handle the kind of constant mid-game pressure that like things like Modibus, for example, can put on the border. So then we have the Azudia. This was the Barrick update for this season, but again, he's not found anything that he's kind of confident with, and I'll take my lead from the champ when it comes to this deck in particular. I think he is Mr. Azudia. So yeah, we'll keep you updated as as things progress. Now, the Evo Tempo Forest deck, like I say, I saw Toby kind of run this deck quite successfully early game, but I think even he, and he's a bit of a genius, I think, in this game, but even he, like, I think, you know, kind of could see it's not kind of top tier. So yeah, it's a very, very fun way to play a Forest right now, but don't expect it to be, you know, particularly dominant. So with that said, let's jump into tier 3. Now, tier 3 is very interesting this week. I think this is one of the most interesting tiers, and I've got some new decks to share with you. So I do think that Tempo Fairy is deserving of going up a tier. I think Tempo Fairy is actually the best way to play Forestcraft this season. And yeah, I say that like generically speaking. I still think Combo Roach is a higher power ceiling, but obviously it has a little bit more binary matchups. But Tempo Fairy is pretty strong. I actually played a little bit of this week, and I was winning games. Like I found it quite good. I think Tempo Fairy is flying a little bit under the radar. There are people that have. Let's be honest. I think Forest is in a difficult spot right now, but the people who have got high scores with Forest have often done so with Tempo Fairy. So I think it's deserving of a tier 3 spot. I think it is a little bit better than the ones we've discussed so far. Now, Super Evo Dragon or Super Dragon, this is a brand new archetype, guys, and this is what you want, isn't it? When a new set lands, you really want to see like new archetypes land in the game, and this is a super fun deck, guys. Really making use of cards that can kind of Evo and Super Evo for free, and bringing down the cost of the Wise Dragon every time you Super Evo. Of course, when you Olivia, you get double Super Evo off. So we'll look at that deck in more detail. Aggro Sword, I think a few people asked from last week, where's Aggro Sword and Evo Sword? So we've made sure that's in the Meta Snapshot this week. Aggro Sword did definitely get some new tools, and this is a fun, fast and furious deck, and I think it fits around the tier 3 level at the minute. Now, Combo Roach is actually, you know, again, this is a dark horse in the meta because Wardhaven is actually being played less right now. Wardhaven, I think as things have settled, Wardhaven is not quite as competitive in some of the top decks, so it's actually being played less. And what that does is it opens the sneaky back door for a deck like Combo Roach to come back in. And I've already noticed players like Dayan, who's known as one of the really good Forest players, and also Chappie, who has been the #1 Forest player for a while this week, and he managed to do this with Combo Roach. So again, I think Combo Roach is actually probably a little bit better than people are realizing right now because of the downtick in Ward Haven. And Evo Sword is a very interesting deck. Again, a new archetype. It's a kind of mid-range deck, but it's got value for days, right? Just keep building these wide boards and using Seathon to kind of build a massive Evo board. Yeah, it's pretty cool, and it's actually one of the decks I want to play with a little bit more in the next week. And then Ward Hybrid Haven, as I said. Now this is the probably big fall from grace, because I think I might have even had this in. I think it was. I don't think it was tier 1 last week. I think it was tier 2. They're actually dropping this all the way down to tier 3. I actually don't believe this is the best Haven deck to play this season anymore. I actually think Crest is actually better. And it's almost like a y'all must have forgot, right? Because we all know Crest was like tier 1 last season, right? And I think because we got the nerf to Benison, maybe people were just like a little bit, including myself, like a little bit, oh, Crest have fallen. And it's like, well, have they really? Like, what have they lost apart from like one card? They haven't even lost the ability on that card, by the way. I'm going to show you a deck. We run that card, spoiler alert. But we only run one of them. But point is that it's gone up from 2 to 4. Whoopie-doo. It hasn't lost anything. And I actually think that as the meta's settling, I think Crest is actually still better than Ward. So Hybrid Ward for me has fallen to tier 3. I still think it's a good deck. I still think it's really on the border. If someone really wanted to argue that it's like low tier 2, I'd kind of take that, to be honest. It really is in that 2.5 kind of category, but it just doesn't. A lot of the top tier decks can deal with it, and you gotta ask yourself, like, how many favorable matches does it have? Obviously, it's very favorable. Combo Roach, like the kind of gatekeeper to that deck taking over. But yeah, I just think it's not quite as powerful as we kind of initially got excited about. So for me, that one has come down. Let's take a look at some of these decks. So this is the Tempo Fairy deck that I've been playing this week. And as I said, it's pretty good. You get after some ridiculous fast stats. And by the way, I really want to big up Alphamere. I think this card is better than I realized when I did my card review. This card's really good. Like, it's really good. Like, there was one game where I think I'd Ariad Lady of the Woods, and then the next turn I played, I can't remember what it was. I played something, Matt being Cynthia or something that was fairly big. And then I Alphia'd to make both units ward. And my opponent had like, he got me low. He had me on like 6 health, but he only had Odin to push damage, and obviously because I created a double ward tall unit, couldn't do anything. And I was like, And then obviously the +1 rush ability is massive, right? Because most of the kind of things that buff our board, like Faye Twinkletoes, like Cynthia, they only buff fairies, whereas Alphamere just buffs your entire board. They don't care. It doesn't care. It doesn't even have to be a forest card, right? So Alphamere is actually in a deck like this, it's actually really powerful. It can help you just suddenly burst and push a lot of damage. So I'm really, really loving that card. Next up, we got Super Dragon. And as I say, guys, this is the brand new archetype. This deck is a lot of fun. And what I love about it is it's not reliant on ramp. You can see that we only run a couple of dragon signs. We're not running any of the new Zui ramp cards. We do run 3 copies of Lu Feng. But the thing about this deck is, like, if you don't draw the dragon sign on 3, it's not the end of the world. Just make sure you draw your Ocean Rider. And what you can actually do is you can actually build through the curve quite nicely with this deck, right? And when you get into your turn 5, you've got your great comeback cards and your Galmeo and your Seasoned Merman. By the way, I think Galmeo's like pretty key. I think getting the 0 costs off every turn is like quite important with this deck, actually. Izmir is making an appearance, and this card, it does 3 AoE damage on Evo, but if you've got 10 player points, when you play this thing, it Evos for free, right? So all those classic free Evos abilities, which we look for in an Evo deck, this is a really nice one. Yeah, it's really cool. In fact, it costs 5. Like, you can obviously play 2 of them on 10 as well and get double Evo for free and a 6 damage AoE, which is also another nice combo. Lots of ways to trigger Sandolphin, right? Louis Feng, obviously, when you're in overdrive, this thing is Evo in for free. Now, Girl Next Door is a card that I hugely underrated. And don't get me wrong, like this card it is particularly good in this type of deck. I don't know if it's a card you run in most dragon decks, but in this type of deck, it's very good, right? Because you are going to be getting super evos free from this thing, and it's so good. You can then use things like the 0 cost AoE spells. You'll get another one if you put Meg down, but obviously because she's super evo, she doesn't take any damage. She's a great trigger to the Wise Guardian Dragon, which is kind of like the centerpiece of this deck. So she's very, very good in the late game. Grandmaster, similar thing. Like once you've got the SBA, this thing is evoing for free. Yeah, and then so the ability to kind of like, even after spending your evo and super evo points, you've just got so many cards that can put pressure on the board. Now, speaking of super evo points, Olivia this might be the best deck for that exists right now for Olivia. Like Olivia is so crucial to this deck because she draws a card and then you super evo. I like playing her on 8 with something like an Ocean Rider and Super Evo in that. That's a really, really big board swing. And also you end up with a ward unit that's pretty beefy. But obviously you can play her on 7, comboing out with all the Megalorc, etc. Filene's very important too, because as I said about the 0 cost AoEs, she gives you an AoE. She basically gives you a board clear, right? Because you don't even need her. As long as you've got the 3 cost spell from her, then playing the 0 costs to damage the board and then playing that to AoE is really good. And Neptune's pretty key as well, right? So when we hit this 7 slot, if we need to heal against faster decks, we've got Neptune. And then obviously after Neptune, you've got the Ocean Riders, you've got the Call of Megalorcas, you've got the Seasoned Mermans. So there's quite a lot of heal coming from there as well. And then into the I guess the kind of centerpiece of the deck is the Wise Guardian Dragon. And who'd have thought that this bronze card was going to come into power, which is what is happening. Some people have even compared it to Maddening Benison in that sense, where it gets released and it's not very good, and then a couple of sets later it finds its power. This card's brilliant, guys, in this deck, right? Like Olivia into something else super evoing with this Wise Guardian in hand basically turns this into a 4 cost unit. That's incredibly powerful. You then play something like a Meg, and then suddenly this costs you 1, which is obviously pretty goddamn broken. So, and then on top of all that, we have the Genius Dragon as the kind of Genesis Dragon. So just a one-off, just as that kind of threat to kind of finish the end game. And Sandolphin's kind of similar, right? That this thing comes out, it gives you some heal, and that can also push damage. So I think this deck is very, very good. It may even end up pushing tier 2, but I think it's like a pretty solid tier 3 deck at least right now. And I should say, there's quite a few people getting beyond with it, so it could well end up being higher than where we've currently got it. This is the aggro sword deck, guys. So as you can see, we've got 9 1-drops. Yes, now we're talking a real aggro deck, right? Really pushing that tempo right from the start, playing on curve. If you like traditional CCG kind of like aggro tempo decks, you're gonna love this. Like playing a 1-drop, then a 2-drop, then a 3-drop, and the fact that we've got things like Feather, which is like a 5/4 3-drop. I mean, that is just so brutal to have to deal with early game. And then you follow it up with a Zirconia. You're like, are you kidding me? Like, so this deck is a deck that's just gonna like, you're gonna know if you've lost against this deck by turn 4 or 5, pretty much. It's very, very powerful, very, very powerful indeed. So yeah, nice to see more straightforward kind of like beatdown deck in the game. And this is the combo Roach deck. Now, again, I actually think that this is low-key pretty good right now. Might be a good time to start playing a bit more Roach, as I say, with things like Ward dipping in the meta. You all know by now how this deck works, right? Like drawing through your deck, getting Godwood Staff down, getting Lambert down to give you 0 cost spells, discounting Bale to 0 cost, and then going off for the big killer Roach combos. Now, this is the new archetype, Evo Sword. Now, there are various versions of it, but I'm going to share this one with you. And what we've basically got here is the ability to go wide and go wide often. And if you think about it, you've got your normal Evos with like Zirconia, gives you wide board, or Gildaria, and then you've got like your super Evos. With things like Amelia into Luminous Mage is obviously a powerful one on turn 8, giving everything barrier. But then after you've done that, you know, you've got Amalia, which is obviously, I mean, Amalia sort of feels like a super Evo, I always think, for free, right? But then after you've done all that, you've got the Gildarias giving you free super Evos. And if they manage to deal with all of that, then you kind of come in with this Seraphim here and just basically, if it's SBA'd, it gives your board Evo. If it's Super SBA'd, then it gives your board Super Evo. So playing this with like a Luminous Mage on turn 9, after you've put out all those floods and with wide boards and your opponent's dealt with them, then this just kind of like breaks the back. So if you love that idea of wave after wave of value, this is a really, really good deck. It's probably the kind of sword deck I'm looking forward to playing a bit more of, to be honest. And the Wardhaven, as I say, this is the deck that kind of was shot out of the gates with all the potential. I think a lot of the meta has been built around it. It's still powerful. It still creates those massive Aether boards that our opponent can't deal with the threat of Jean kind of buffing them next turn. It's got a lot of potential, this deck, but it's really just about how it kind of like matches up. So when you think about like a card like Sincero, for example, Sincero just doesn't care about an Aether, right? Like Sincero actually welcomes an Aether, right? Because Sincero just not only does it clear it, but the one unit that's maybe even tall enough to survive then gives the Sincero that's super evolved the chance to hit something, which then does another 1 damage to face. So you kind of almost play into what the Loot Sword player wants to happen. So there are some matchups that are bad, but you know, like Haven's pretty good against Rune, mainly because of Marwyn having access to a random targeted banish spell is massive. Because that deals with the Lanthium, and there's very few things that can deal with the Lanthium in the game right now. So any kind of Haven is good into that match. I really do think this is like almost in a tier of its own. I think it's somewhere in that 2.5 at the minute, between 2 and 3, which is why I've put it right at the top of tier 3, because I don't really want to have to create half tiers. All right, so let's take a look at tier 2. So where I say that Ward Hybrid is right in the border of tier 3 and 2, I kind of feel like Ramp Dragon's in a similar place. I kind of moved it down to tier 3, and then I was like, no, I think it's still there. So I put it back up. I think I'm putting it at the bottom of tier 2. But it's great to see a Dragon deck that is, many people have hit like, top of ladder or beyond with Ramp Dragon, so that's good. Spell boost, the bane of the game for many seasons. It has fallen off a little bit, but it is still powerful, and I've seen a few different versions of it actually being played recently, including a couple of the new deck cards playing in. But the kind of gist of the deck is the same as it's always been, right? Like getting spell boosting up and declimbing on sort of on a Cocytus on turn 10, or a ginormous super Kion. Yeah, it's the same old. It's the same old way that this deck wins. It's just that there's a lot of things that can beat it before it can do that now, which is why it's dropped slightly. But it's still a tier 2 deck. It's still very, very powerful. Speaking of which, I've actually I've actually put up Mid Abyss. I think Mid Abyss was in tier 3 last week, but actually quite a few players are doing very, very well with Mid Abyss at the top of the game. And I think it's just like, again, Abyss are just sport for choice right now. They've become, ironically, from season 1 where people complained about them, they've actually become the best class, I would say, in terms of like, the full set of cards. If you were like new to the game this week, I might even say pick Abyss as your class, because you can do so much with it. Whereas like, some of the others, it's kind of like you're kind of in one archetype. Anyway, Mid Abyss is just the more simple way to play Abyss, right? It's like, you play on curve, you kind of beat down your opponent while developing powerful boards. You will run out of steam eventually, in comparison with something like a mode deck, for example, which just has endless value. But the idea is you just wrap the game up. You just win the game before you reach that point. So I think Mid Abyss is its power level is absolutely like at tier 2 right now. And Lishena Egg Portal. Now I do think that this deck is hard to kind of master. I don't think you come against like tons of like top S tier players that really know how to pilot this deck very, very well. I certainly don't, but I do think that power level wise it's very strong right now. It's definitely towards the top end of tier 2, and there's actually a pure egg portal, and then there's a hybrid egg portal. I'm going to look at both lists today. And then Crest Haven is one of the surprises of this week's meta, potentially. I think I had it down in tier 3 last week. And for me, Crest Haven is kind of... this week has been one that's reminded everybody that this was the bane of the meta last season and that it actually hasn't gone anywhere. Toned down a little bit, maybe, but only a little bit. And yeah, actually, I'm really enjoying it. I've played quite a bit of Crest Haven in the last couple of days and it's really powerful. I'm really enjoying this deck. So we'll take a look at that. I think this deck is right up there at the top of tier 2. So let's take a look at the decks then. So this is the Ramp Dragon. So Ramp Dragon, not too much to say over last week. I think obviously one of the stars of the show is Wilmus. Wilmus is one of the things that's really added to this deck, and the threat of being able to play this down so early. You know, if you double ramp into Wilmus and your opponent's still only on like 4 or 5 player points, like what the hell are they going to do against this thing? Especially if you've evoed it and it's got like 8 health, so super. Next up, we've got Spell Boost Rune, and again, not too much to say. I do like the copy of Unleashed. I've even seen the 7-cost spell being used as a one-off, so people are experimenting a little bit, but I do think that ultimately, you know, the kind of main strategy has not changed for 3-4 seasons really with this deck, and so it's all about spell boosting into those D-kind combos towards the end. Still a very, very powerful deck. Mid-range Abyss, we did talk about how this has gone up to tier 2 this week. And obviously we've got the new card in the 6th slot. You can easily just run Undead Soldiers, to be honest with you. But this card, if your opponent does not run Banish effects, don't forget this card, once you play it, will permanently be on the board, right? Like, obviously they can kill it, but it will come back. So if you've buffed it and then they kill it, it'll come back as a 2/7. But the idea that it's just permanently stuck to the board, for a deck like this as well, is just so goddamn good, right? Like, obviously things like Shadowverse, buff units that are already on the board, and if they can't get rid of this, that's super powerful. So yeah, a lot of players climbing to the top of the rankings with Mid Abyss, so very, very powerful. I also think this is probably going to make a pretty decent tournament deck as well. And Egg Portal. So as we discussed last week, Egg received a few pretty good tools. Like I do think Stonebreaker is quite a nice cheap kind of removal as well. So that we've got that in here. We've even got a single copy of the Ilsa. But obviously the Bub, as I call it, is absolutely massive in this deck. Because you play Bub, and then all of a sudden, every Dark Egg, instead of pinging for 1, pings for 2, right? So you suddenly start to speed up the clock, put your opponent on a clock. And as I said earlier, there's actually a hybrid version as well that has actually hit the #1 slot on the Portal rankings. And this is what that deck looks like. So I just look at this deck and scratch my head. I'm not going to sit here and claim to be any kind of expert with it, because the thing that's a little bit, I don't know, confusing a little bit about this type of deck is that, you know, if you play a Lashania, and let's say you play things like Devastating Soprano, and let's say you've got, that gives you 2 eggs, right? How do you play cards like Orcus, right? Because Orcus needs a clear board to be able to do max value Orcuses, right? So I think with this deck, what you end up doing is kind of saying that playing a pure Portal deck can be a bit inconsistent, playing a pure Egg deck can be a bit consistent in finding your key tools, but having this hybrid allows you each game to kind of go, okay, I've got the hand to play into this. And so maybe you just actually play more of a Portal game plan, or you play more of an Egg game plan, and I think that that's the idea, that it kind of affords you flexibility. It could also be that you do have some Egg setup and you just play an Orcus that's not, you know, not quite as it's not quite as full board wide as it would be in a pure puppet deck, but we've still got the Bub. I like the wired assaults in here. It's really interesting. It's definitely a deck that I'd like to try a little bit more of. And next up, we've got the Crest Amulet. Now, I did say I've been playing this quite a bit, and this is the version I have been playing. And I've tried quite a few versions, actually, and I do think this is my favorite version so far. And, you know, having just a single copy of Benison, so you don't have these cards that... So you've still got the ability to do it, but you're not kind of like having... Like when you've got 3 copies, just having 2 of them just sat in your hand and just kind of feeling useless because you can't possibly play them right now. And instead, replacing that with things like 2 Luminous Sensors, which can be pulled by Rodeo, giving you the sort of slightly more burst heal, and then actually having a single copy of Darkhaven Grace. I really like that. I wasn't sure about the split, but I think the 2 Sensors, 1 Darkhaven Grace is really good, especially when we're running double Rodeo, right? Because we can kind of probably pull the Grace, and then having that kind of like chip heal, which you also get from things like Supplicant of Repose and Dose of Holiness, means that this deck still feels to me like it's almost got the same kind of level of heal that it had last season now, and I think this balance is very, very good. Even things like the double temples are really good. Like I've stopped Evo Abyss, right? Belial, I've stopped that OTK going off with temple. So like yeah, there's a lot of heal in this deck. And then of course, like the crest things just haven't changed, and actually the setup of Grimnir and Marwyn and Wilbert having the permacrests, and then getting those Supplicant and Devotee of Repulsors down as well, to get you up to 5 crests. I think this deck's really, really powerful. And also, I actually quite like having the single Cocytus back in as well, because there are a few matchups where it gets very, very grindy, for example. Like Rune's an example of that. This matchup against Dirt Rune's really interesting, and it can get very, very grindy. And Cocytus can often come in at the end there and kind of win you the game. So Crest for me is all the way right back up there at the top of tier 2. So let's talk about tier 1. And as you can see, I have got 3 decks that have kind of gone up since last week's version. Now, I did and ah quite a lot about Evo Abyss, because I do think the other 4 are pretty clearly in tier 1 for me. Evo Abyss, I was like, oh, is it top of tier 2? Is it bottom of tier 1? And at the end of the day, I've put it in tier 1 at the bottom, but I've put it at the top. I've put it in tier 1 because there are a lot of people getting to beyond, climbing to top of GM ranks on ladder with this, and even it was run in it got to the final of the streamer tournament that just ran today as well. So for me, like the version that I'm going to share with you, I do think it is tier 1. In addition to that, the Belial win con in this deck is very good against Mode Abyss. It's almost an unwinnable matchup for Mode Abyss, Evo Abyss against this. So it actually has some good and the same can be said into certain other decks as well. It's got good heal against Loot Sword. So it actually does quite well into the meta. So yeah, I think Evo Abyss for me just sneaks into tier 1. Puppet Portal's very powerful, guys. Like, it's if you just want that kind of like burst beatdown deck, Puppet Portal is the way to go. It has benefited from Bubs coming in as well, meaning that you can kind of like override certain strategies that used to be used to counter it. Very, very powerful deck. I think Puppet Portal is going to do very well in the Tom this weekend. Earthrune as well is a deck that is being tinkered with. I've seen people are now starting to bring in things like Anangria into the Earthrune list, which, it's Anangria, so of course that's going to make it better. Like, why did it not have it in the first place? So now this deck's starting to get polished, and it's still very powerful. The Mode Evo Abyss we talked about last week, I think this deck's really powerful. It's a mode deck, but it basically borrows the bats. It's got some of the heal options that you get from Evo Abyss, and that just kind of like, yeah, just has tipped it over the edge. It's a super powerful deck. A lot of people doing well. And Loot Sword is probably the deck that just feels like a little bit ahead of the rest of the pack right now, to be honest. Loot Sword's like the closest thing to just feeling a bit broken in the deck, in the game right now. And yet, some of these decks that we've talked about can do very well, like against Loot Sword. Like, they can actually heal out of its problem zone, and they can outlast it. But Loot Sword is, without a doubt, is definitely the #1 deck in the meta right now. All right, so let's take a look at the list. So this is the Evo Abyss deck that I am bringing you this week. And if you want to go and see my channel, I've got an Evo Abyss deck guide on there that runs so there's 2 ways to play it, right? My deck guide is based on the more mid-range kind of what I'd call like tempo body version. And it's quite a lot of fun, actually, and maybe a bit simpler to play. It's very, very good. This version is a little bit more kind of control based. I think it's targeting a couple of the decks in the meta. You can do things like, for example, wait a minute. Yeah, Mukon, that's it. Like, you can do things like Mukon and use that to like just with the Shadow Crypt to just like kill, for example, something like Lanthium. You can kill it like 6 times because obviously every departed ghost basically has Bane. So it's got some really powerful control turns like that. But yeah, this deck is just phenomenal, right? Nehan there going wide on all the bats to just kind of give you great burst heal. Fidel's probably my favorite card in this set, to be honest. I just absolutely love that card and what it's added to Abyss. And even like little cards like Lilith being played, right? Because the importance of bats this season. So yeah, this is a very, very cool deck. Obviously the triple Belial, you super evo it and you put them on a timer. It's basically the new Azudia deck in a sense. Like, that's how me and Barrick have been talking about it, that like Belial's just a better Azudia OTK deck, to be honest, right now. So yeah, if you like that style of play, this is probably the OTK to play. Now, the Puppet Portal. As you can see from this version, we have got the bubs in there to kind of put our opponent in danger mode. And then obviously things like your Liam and Orcuses come down afterwards and can absolutely destroy your opponent. Now, obviously, you don't have to do that. If you get a really good early curve and you chip your opponent down, you still just finish them with an Orcus on 8. You don't even need to do this bub nonsense. But that's just there as the kind of insurance plan for those people who have got these clever ideas about healing up after your Orcus and all the rest of it. So yeah, definitely Puppet Portal's a really solid pick to play right now. It's one of those decks I just can't seem to stomach playing it for more than sort of like, I don't know, 5 or 6 games at a time. But if you enjoy it and you can just grind with this deck, I do think this is like one of the more solid climbers right now on ladder for sure. Here's the Earthrune deck. As you can see, the main change from last week's version that we showed you is the Anangreas coming into the deck, and I think just like having that really powerful, something else really powerful in the mid game, and actually you know, having that option as well to save your Earth resource and use an Evo instead in the mid game and not the Morelli. That can also be important because you might need it to use it on Norman or Lilinthium setup. So I think Anangria does actually add quite a bit to the power level in this deck, and it's a really nice addition. Next up, we've got Mode Abyss. And as you can see, the deck I showed you last week had a few more like one-offs, a few like it had a single Nehan in, it had a couple of these like one-offs, and it was kind of, I actually prefer that version if I'm honest, because I think like the better you get with the deck, it even had a single Belial in, right? So it gave you another win con. Now the deck that I'm showing you here, which hit beyond and like done very well. I think this is a more kind of clean, sort of a little bit more, makes the deck a little bit more linear, a little bit more digestible, so a little bit more consistent and similar in its game plan. But I would say the deck that I showed you last week, which also hit rank 1, remember, I would say that that's probably the mastery version of this, right? Like, because if it gives you more options and you know how to wield them, then that's better. But if it gives you more options and it kind of confuses you because you're trying to get your head around the deck, there's so much to think about, then this is probably better. So this would be my starting point for it. But basically, it is your classic mode deck, but instead of just playing out the mode, you've also got the option for bats and the kind of Fidel burst heal from that as well, which just means you're going to get into your late game mode, which is what mode wants to do. So very powerful deck right now, guys. And last but not least, I'm bringing you the Loot Sword. This is CQCQ's deck. He did reach rank 1. He's still in the top 10 on the sword. And actually, he's just recently been experimenting with dropping the tentacles and running a Kakaitis, which is kind of interesting, right? So, you know, this is the kind of standard loot tablet deck. And obviously, you've got the ridiculous Sincero into kind of either an ambushed Valse or an Odin, and setting up into like tentacles to finish the game as well, or an Albert, obviously. So just so many ways to just beat your opponent down. Even Zeta and Bia, right? Like this giving you a storm potential if you play it for 6. It's just this deck is in a different league, to be honest, right now. So yeah, it deserves to be number 1 in the meta. So let me know what you think, guys. That is the meta snapshot for the 15th of November. Hopefully, if I remember, I will put a link down below with a link to the deck list, but I did have the QR code. So go back, find your favorite ones, take them for a spin on ladder, and let me know in the comments how you got on. Do like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for all the support as always. And I can't wait to see how we get on this weekend in the last chance qualifier. I was going to play in it, but I actually missed the blooming deadline to submit my decks because I fell asleep, because that's what happens when you've got kids. But anyway, either way, it's going to be an exciting weekend of Shadowverse, and I'm looking forward to bringing you some more updates next week. Ciao for now, guys.